preach at Middletown at 10 o'clock.
My dear, we are leaving now.
What? I just started breakfast.
We are going to hear Mr. Whitfield preach. Come on. Time passes.
The horse is getting tired.
You must dismount and run alongside.
Run alongside?
Yes, Mr. Whitfield preaches at 10 o'clock. We must be there.
People are staring at us. We look like we're fearing for our lives.
We must be there on time.
I see a strange cloud ahead. It isn't raining, but it sounds like thunder.
It's all the people, thousands of them. Every horse is galloping with all its might.
Dust is covering everything. Even the sky looks dusty. Oh, our clothes will be all spoiled. See how they look?
We must get to the gathering place in time. How our clothes look doesn't matter.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
He looks almost angelic.
I am here to declare to you, John 3:7 says, ye must be born again.
Why do you always say that, Mr. Whitfield?
Because, madam, you must.
Nice. Well done.
Okay, so Texas is probably around here, so we're coming from Jack, Texas. And New York's way up there in the corner. New York. Florida would be at the very bottom of the spot near the door. And the rest of you can fill in whatever state you want. So if somebody comes in here, whatever state that is.
Nevada.
That would be like New Mexico or Arizona.
Okay, not bad. So when we think about the United States of America, we tend to think of this. This is America, right? Well, no. Starting next week, we are heading for Revolutionary War. So all through the next probably 4 or 5 weeks when we are studying this, I do not want you to think. All of you, come with me all the way to the middle. None of that belongs to the colony. Here you go. None of this. None of this. Think about that. Not all that. So if you're interested in the idea of the whole claim about stolen lands, you should know, you can look up a map from about 1810 and who owned what. The French owned up here, the Spanish owned down here, and actually all of that land was Spanish land. So if they want to get reparations or apologies, they should talk to Spain. This is all we had. These were the colonies. So when the war started in the Revolution, this was it. Tiny little colonies that weren't even united yet. So when they decided to fight, there are 8 million people in Britain. There are 2.5 million people here in our little tiny colonies. About 500,000 of them are loyalists, which means they're still loyal to the guy back there, George III. You know the one who's crazy? They're loyal to him, and so 500,000 out of 2.5 million, math girl, how many is that? 1 out of every what?
You said 500,000 out of every
Out of 2.5 million. So 5 out of 25.
1 out of 5.
1 out of 5 people are still on the other side, and you didn't know which ones it was. They might turn you in at any time, talked about the British, spy on you, etc. The other thing that was very interesting was the British had the rights, supposedly, what they call quarters. So their soldiers came over to suppress the rebellion of us, and they had the right legally to come to your house and be like, we're staying here, feed us, where's chickens, we're going to your pantry, we're going to eat all your stuff, we got, 2,000 soldiers outside, and you gotta let us live here. And you couldn't do anything about it. So it wasn't just, when people talk about this, no taxation without representation, it was way more than that. It wasn't just about, we don't like taxes, so we're going to fight for it. A lot of them were going to die. So there's 2.5 million people here, 500,000 was still belong over there. About 500,000 of them they were either slaves or they were neutral, like the Quakers, and so they weren't part of it either. So you're talking like 1.5 million people against 8 million people. And the most powerful army and navy in the world against us who, remember the Puritans, what they were all about? They were farmers, right? There was one guy who was a, war person, but a lot of them, they're like, I got a pitchfork. Seriously. So this is the America we're talking about. It took guts. It wasn't like now. We're like, hey, we're America. Do you really want to fight us? It wasn't like that at all. We about squashed. And it was God's intervention, not just that time, but there were time after time after time that we should have just lost entirely. And God came through and came through for us. That's another thing you're going to read about in the book. We don't have time to talk about it all. So come back over here. Time to gather around. You come on over to gather around the book, the Bridget book, which I got for $1 in the library. It's pretty helpful. Wow. Oh, okay. I think you're going to Oh, I'm not. Okay, yes. I'm not into the ground. That's why. Anyway. So this is it. This is what America looks like. They didn't even call themselves Americans. They were the Yanks, you know? British called us that. They were just a colony. That was it. America was this whole thing. What we think of as Canada, North America, South America, Central America. It was just, this is the colony. That's all we were. And so again, Spanish. So here we are. And just some of the things that happened. Very interesting. 1777. So that's a year after independence is declared. The Republic of Vermont. 6 months after claiming independence from New Hampshire and New York, Vermont adopted a constitution that provided for adult male suffrage and banned slavery. So this whole fight against slavery was happening way back, actually in the 1600s. People were trying to get it stopped. Something over here, if you're thinking about the British, and like, well, they're nice, you know, they have nice accents, they drink tea. If you want to find a place to put that, I hope so you can sit down, that's fine.
That's fine.
Blake Charlton, let's talk about him. He was this dude. They were American loyalists. So remember that 500,000 people that was for the other side? So he gets together, I don't know, his group, the Loyal Legion, yay, in South Carolina. On May 28th, his men bayoneted to death more than 100 unarmed Continental soldiers, many under a flag of surrender. And that was one of the reasons they ended up with some of the harsh and cruel things done by the Swamp Fox. So interestingly enough, when you're looking at history and they're like, Swamp Fox, oh, he had these practices that weren't very, you know, Geneva appropriate, which that wasn't even a thing. But then you find out this is what happened first, and this is their response. There's more to the story. Always find out there's more to the story. But yeah, that's like really bad. And in the middle of all of this growing tensions and what are we going to do, and a lot of people being like, why don't we just pay the tax and just do what they want and let them, you know, steal all our food and all that kind of stuff, because we don't want a war because we're just going to lose and it's going to destroy everything. And now we're all going to be taxed. So like, yeah. Well, in the middle of all this, kids are going to school, right? New kids. They had a little pink little horn book, most of them, and it was this little, looked like a paddle, and it had a little thing on it that had like the alphabet pretty much, and you used it as your reference when you were writing on your little slate. You ever seen tables when you had their little slate and their little chalkboard? Or if you didn't have a slate, you might have the sand and a stick or something else where you're just practicing because paper was precious and there was a tax on all the paper because Britain was just trying really hard to like, you're not going to tell me what to do. George was really stubborn about that. So they're learning, and most of them, for a lot of them, the only textbooks they had was the Bible, which is a good textbook, and this little guy right here. So this is yours. From now on, for the rest of the class, it goes in your little folder, and I will be asking for your binder, pen, and primer instead of just your binder and pen to get points every week. Okay, so now we are going to be not kindergartners because there was no such thing. There were not grades. So you didn't go into the school saying, I'm in 4th grade, and they wouldn't test you and say, oh, you tested into 5th grade. It was, what do you know? And we start at the beginning. So if you think about it, this new school opens up because they finally have a girl who's 16 and willing to teach. Lori was wow. So you might go to school until you're 16, and they're like, okay. Yay, okay. And you might have anybody from 4 years old to 20-year-old boys bigger than you, and you had to figure out how to make that happen. Sit down, be quiet. That's where grabbing your parent is effective. So yeah, it's great because people were brave back then. So basically what would happen is, so now there's a girl and they can have a school, or maybe the people are like, we have enough money now that we can pay somebody to have what they call a dame school, which was in somebody's home. And again, a woman's teaching, and she's probably got her other kids hanging out doing stuff. So like homeschool with other kids, which makes sense. If we had a group here and we were like, okay, we got to teach our kids, but we got to farm. And the women are needed too. What are we going to do? We would probably figure out a way. Everybody's going to go to my house to learn history, and then everybody's going to go to Miss Rhonda Hill's house, and they're going to learn math, and we'd figure it out, right? So you might have a 5-year-old learning to read out of this, and you might have a 13-year-old learning to read out of this, and you might have a 17-year-old learning to read out of this, just because this is the beginning. So, all of you, this is the beginning. Something you're going to need to know. We'll read the intro first. Tell you what, Grace, could you go get the music stand so we can set that thing down? Okay, when you read the foreword, there's a reason for it. The contents of this edition, with the exception of the foreword, are a camera reproduction of the 1777 New England Primer. And you may be like, well, that's after the Declaration of Independence. Well, there were versions before that. This is just the version that's okay. Etc., 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 blah, blah, blah. Claire, would you start reading next page on starting the value of the shorter catechism?
The value of the shorter catechism, an inseparable part of the primer, was explained in the 1843 edition. Our Puritan fathers brought the shorter catechism with them across the ocean. Through this catechism, the why often so now fill up a child in the you should go? Why not now put them in cheap treasure that everything in industry accumulated?
Okay, if you've never heard of a catechism, it's usually because we think of it now in reference to like Catholics. A catechism is just a question and answer way of learning something. So, for example, well, the first thing in the catechism is what is the chief end of man? The chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. So, if I walked in and said, well, like even just like a cheer, what are we going to do? Beat the so-and-so. You know, the person says one thing and you say the other thing, and everybody knows what you're supposed to say. That's what a catechism is, and it was a way to train the kids. Answer, repeat, answer, repeat, answer, repeat. And then they would learn all this doctrine, even if they didn't get to the point of understanding it yet, they knew the right answers. So George Washington as a kid, John Adams as a kid, Lafayette as a kid, Thomas Jefferson as a kid. This. And it tells you a lot of the qualities and the priorities and the things that honor and goodness that mattered to them and made up the people strong enough to be willing to do what they did. Okay, Rachel, can you start at the 1900 edition?
The 1900 edition described the impact of the primer. The New England Primer was one of the greatest books ever published. It went through innumerable editions. It reflected in a marvelous way the spirit of the age that produced it, and contributed, perhaps more than any other book except the Bible, to the molding of those sturdy generations that gave America its liberty and its institutions.
Okay, turn the page. So they're talking about they brought this stuff over on the ship to train their kids, along with the truths of the scripture. So they had the Geneva Bible, and they often had this catechism, and now they're making books that include more stuff to help kids grow. This is what they're learning to read from. None of this Dick and Jane stuff, like this stuff. Okay, something you need to know about this little book. The illustrations, next page, helpful notes. The illustrations in the New England Primer reflect the printing of the era in which they were first introduced and used. The illustrations are crude woodcuts. So what that means is somebody took a piece of wood and they carved the design in it, and then they used that for printing. That's how they made the pictures in the book. So if you turn to about here, you'll notice all these little pictures, and you're like, wow, oh yeah, that's a good one. Those were made on wood and used for printing. All right, so the typeset is small and irregular, both for typical features of the hand engraving, hand typesetting, and hand printing of the slow hand-operated machines of that era. So everything in this book, can you imagine putting every little letter in? If you want to know what one of those looks like, you can go to Madison, Georgia, down the road. There is a cultural center. It has an old schoolhouse in it, and it also has an old printing, like, I don't know what you would call it, but all the drawers with all the letters. And capital letters and small letters, the reason that they're called what they are has to do with where they were in reference to the printing press, where you got the big ones and where you got the small one. And it's just cool. You can see all the little tiny, it's just fun. It's like those of you who like Legos, be like, this would be so cool. And then you got a typo and you got to start all over again. Okay, now the thing you need to know is to read this, it's going to be a little bit confusing. Go all the way up till you see John, the Honorable John Hancock, President of the American Congress. Look at the word president. Looks like precedent, right? Like an F missing its little thing. That is an S. So remember how we talked about language changes? Well, spelling does too. So if you were to go back to a 1611, a real 1611, you would see this F thingy that's not an F. Or a long one. So go to the next page. How glorious. And then you're like, well, there's an S. Yeah, there was an S too. Think about it. The S has two sounds, like sizes. That's an S, but it sounds like a Z, right? Sizes. Or shuffle. That's a shaw. Oh, good. So they made different letters for it. So how glorious is our heavenly King who reigns above the sky. Again, all S's. How shall what? Now it looks like a big long. So take the S and stretch it out like this. It looks like that, right? How shall a child presume to sing his dreadful majesty? So it's going to take a minute to get used to it. But whenever you see something looks like an F, but it doesn't sound right, like magifly, just try an S. See how it phrased. So it starts out with a song to the Lord. Next page. I'm going to read these, and I want you to read along so you get used to seeing that big, long squiggly and thinking of an S. Here we go. The young infant's or child's morning prayer. So this is one of the first things they learn. This is what you pray in the morning. Almighty God, the maker of everything in heaven and earth, the darkness goes away, and the daylight comes at thy command. Thou art good, and doest good continually. I thank thee that thou hast taken such care of me this night, and that I am alive and well this morning. Save me, O God, from evil all this day long, and let me love and serve thee forever for the sake of Jesus Christ, thy Son. Wow. Well, remember, these are people who, came over on the ship, and some of them didn't make it, and they went through the winter, and some of them didn't make it, and then they did this other stuff, and some of them didn't make it. The whole idea of, thank you, God, that I made it through the night, and I'm still alive, is a good prayer. It's still a good prayer. We just don't think about it very much, and we think of things like that as a tragedy until we talk about it. But in their times, death was very much a part of life. If somebody died, they were out there burying them. They were the ones, there weren't funeral homes and stuff. Death was a part of who they were. So it's not like super creepy that they're doing this. This is not. Okay, the infant or young child evening prayer. So now this is what we're going to pray in the evening. O Lord God, who knowest all things, thou seest me by night as well as by day. I pray thee for Christ's sake, forgive me whatever I have done amiss this day, and keep me all this night while I am asleep. I desire to lie down under thy care, and to abide forever under thy blessing, for thou art a God of all power and everlasting mercy. Amen. Wow. So if a kid grows up praying that in the morning and that every night, they're going to have a dependence on God, a recognition of God's power, thankfulness for his grace. It's not like, good morning, God, please give me everything I want. Good night, God, please give me everything I want tomorrow. So now you look to the right. Now we're getting into, your alphabet. So we have consonants, we have vowels, we have double letters, and that's very, very interesting. So some of the stuff is like italics. So they're already learning cool things that would later become cursive. Look to the next page. Great letters. The great letters are the bigger ones because they take up more space. And if you look down at the bottom, it says this is easy. Okay. Kids were expected to learn stuff. Not a lot of playtime, you had stuff to do. Milk the cows and then come learn stuff. Easy syllables, words of one syllable. Next page. Words of one syllable, words of two syllables. Next, 4 syllables. Benefited. Beatitude. Ceremony. Formidably. Pretty guys are smart. Okay, next page when you finally get to the spot with all of these 6 syllables. You're smart about it. Smart about it. Look to the bottom. A lesson for children. A lesson for children. You can give a list. You can read it through the off. Look at these. The first lessons that they learn. We're going to read them one at a time, all the way around. You start.
Pray to God, love God, fear God, serve God, take not God's name in vain. Do not swear. Do not steal. Cheat not in your play. Play not with God.
Call no ill names.
Use no word
Tell no lies. Hate lies. Speak the truth. Spend your time well. Love your school. Learn your book.
Strive to learn. Do not be a
Dunce. And I was like, you know what? You should be a dunce. In other words, think for yourself if you're bringing on. Wow. If you read that every day of your life, you have some good character. Or at least you know some good character to have, right? Okay. Keep your primer. We're going to go back to our seat. But while we do, we can do the computer. We will read. Make ourselves sick. It'll be fun. Okay. Let's see. Let's get in the line like little ducks. Little kids with our primers. Everybody in line. This is the alphabet. And in the alphabet, for every word, you're going to run through. So I'm going to read the first one, and then we're going to go back one at a time. Here we go. In Adam's fall, we sinned all. Correct. Everything else comes straight out of the scripture. So for every letter of the alphabet, you're learning biblical content. And then we get to, close your books. The first questions. These don't really count as the catechism. They're just basics. Here we go. See how many of you know, children with your premise. Who was the first man? Say it.
Adam,
Who was the first woman?
Eve,
Who was the first murderer?
Cain,
Who was the first martyr?
Abel,
Who was the first translated and taken up without dying?
oh,
Amen.
Enoch,
Very good. Who was the oldest man?
Methuselah,
Who built the ark?
Noah,
Who was the patientest man? We would call him the one who suffered the most.
Job,
Very good. The meekest man. You may not know that one. God calls him the meekest man, and it's Moses. That's it. Moses. Who led Israel into Canaan?
Moses,
Joshua. Who was the strongest man?
Samson,
Who killed Goliath?
David,
Who was the wisest man?
Solomon,
Who was in the whale's belly?
Jonah,
Who, oh goodness, saves lost men?
Jesus,
Who is Jesus Christ?
the Son of God,
Who's the mother of Christ?
Mary,
Who betrayed his master?
Judas,
Who denied his master?
Peter,
Who was the first Christian martyr? Who was the chief apostle to the Gentiles?
Paul.
Good. Really good kindergartners. Okay, you sit down. We're going to be reading
Mom.
more of this throughout the next weeks so that you can learn. One of your challenges this week is to go to the back. There aren't page numbers, which makes it complicated to tell you what to do. But in the back is what they call a conversation between the devil, youth, and Christ. And so it's a little bit like Pilgrim's Progress or Screw Tape Letters, where the devil wants to tell the youth something and Christ wants to tell the youth something, and what is the youth going to do? It's pretty interesting. So it's going to be your job to read that if you would, and then write me a summary so that a modern kid would understand what they're talking about. Yes, I do. Can you actually hand one of those out to everybody?
One of what?
Those papers? Okay, so back to our PowerPoint, which doesn't exist anymore. Written. Yeah. We are having technological problems. Now, you probably noticed a picture on here. I am super duper duper excited about this. There is, Sight and Sound is putting out a movie, like a real movie, not a play. And it's called A Great Awakening. I didn't know anything about this when I started planning this class. They picked it for the 250th birthday of America, and it is all about George Whitefield and kind of his relationship with Ben Franklin. Because even though people talk about Ben Franklin not being a Christian, well, I keep telling you, I want to tell you more. I want to tell you like all kinds of stuff, but that's why we didn't talk about the Great Awakening very much at all in this class, even though it's like hugely significant in history and especially the history of America, because that movie's coming out April 3rd, which is Easter weekend. So the day before Easter, we are having a field trip. Yeah, it's a Saturday. Anybody who wants to go, we're probably going to go to the one in Eatonton. I hear it's cleaner and nicer and safer or something like that. So we're going to pick, once the tickets start being available, because they're not yet, I looked them up. I'll let everybody know so you can get as many tickets as you want for as many you want to come. We meet there, we watch the movie, and then we go someplace else out to eat. and talk about how close it was. But I've just seen the trailer. Seriously, it's one of those goosebump kind of movies. Like you watch 2 minutes and you're like, wow. Yeah. Everybody, I think. Yeah. So I'm super, super excited. So that's going to be our field trip coming up. And in the meantime, the challenges are on the paper. You can read them if you want to do them. And so back to your handouts. It ends with one guy I do want to tell you about from The Great Awakening. That is George Whitfield is going to be in the movie. The one that you don't, he's the one you hear about because he was so gregarious and dynamic. He actually wanted to be an actor. So I think that's really cool. Whatever your personality is, God can use it. And God used that flair for the dramatic and his stage presence as a really, really effective way to give the gospel. But so then if you're like, well, only the people like George Whitfield, God uses them. Nope. On the other side was a dude named Jonathan Edwards. He's at the bottom. Jonathan Edwards, wish I had time. He preached a sermon called Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. And it was revolutionary. It wasn't dynamic. He read his sermons. Now, at the time, one thing that's really awesome about American history is there was a whole season of time when they did not just speak sermons, they wrote them and then they read them. And so we have tons of historical content on exactly what the sermon people said leading up to the revolution. A lot of them preached on political things. A lot of them preached on rights and all kinds of stuff that some people would be like, no, that's too controversial. We can't do that. They're like, let me tell you. So Jonathan Edwards, though, was not that kind of guy. He was like, he was a scholar. Think of like the most scholarly scholar you can imagine. That's Jonathan Edwards. And so he had this sermon. He'd read it before and it hadn't really done much for anything, but it was time. The Great Awakening came from God, not from a guy, not from 100 guys. It came from God. When he read it this time, people were weeping. People were down on their knees asking God for their forgiveness. It spread all over. It became this huge thing because it was time. And God did the Great Awakening, not just there and not just George Whitfield, but in other places, in colleges where the Enlightenment had taken over. You might have 2 or 3 guys who were like, I want to seek God. They were getting bullied. They were getting threatened. And God's like, nope, I'm just going to start a revival right here. And in another college, no knowledge of any of this other stuff. He does it somewhere else and he does it somewhere else. It was time. When God decides to do something, he'll do it. And that's something we can pray for our nation for revival. It doesn't have to be a Charlie Kirk. And now that Charlie Kirk's gone, what are we going to do? God does it. God does it in his way, in his time. We can trust him for that. But we do have enough time, I think. What are those skits? That's enough if I can find my door. Okay. When Jonathan Edwards was little, he would fill us up. I need, let's see. I need somebody willing to be a son. Somebody willing to be. Come on. Okay, so come on. Let's just go. Okay, they don't know this, but okay. Whoa, wait. Today is like winging it day. Here we go. Okay, so this is about John Edwards when he was a kid. Here we go. I'm going to be the professor. You're the mom, and you are the son. You're John. Here we go. The professor comes into the room. Not appropriately dressed for the time period. You are sleeping.
Hello, sir. Are you just passing by?
I am, ma'am.
Well, welcome to our home. Do sit a while and rest. I'll have one of my children bring you a glass of water from our well.
You are kind. Have you many children?
11.
You are blessed. I am a professor at Yale University. I hope you will consider sending your sons to our illustrious seminary.
I only have one son.
1 out of 11? Oh, the giggling.
Is dinner almost ready?
We have a guest. Manners.
Oh, I didn't see you there. Hello, sir.
You wouldn't by chance be interested in tutoring, would you?
Tutoring?
Yes, my son's tutor taught him Latin and then Greek. After he mastered those, they moved on to Hebrew, but the tutor just quit. He said he had nothing left that he could teach it.
Madam, why have you kept your son back from university? He must be in his late 20s or 30s to know all that.
Oh, goodness me, where are my manners? This is my son, Jonathan. He's 12.
12?
Are you okay?
Well, I don't believe it. Say it in Latin.
Are you okay?
No. I mean, say, e pluribus unum.
That is Latin, sir. Say, do you know Chinese? I'm quite curious about Chinese.
Madam, I fear I could not tutor this young man. I am needed at my university in Latin and Greek.
Hmm. Do I have to? Hebrew is so much more interesting than helping fix dinner.
It'd get much less interesting if you were starving to death.
Excellent point. You are so smart, Mother.
So as you will learn, a lot of these guys who did these amazing great things, they were geniuses, but they were also smart, not just as in I can learn things, but they did learn things. Some of them, if we get into the Signers of the Declaration of Independence book, it talks about what kind of an education they had. Some of them were from rich families, and they were able to give them a very liberal education, which means they were able to give them a kind of whole, well-rounded education. Like they could get tutors to come in and teach them Jane Eyre and that sort of thing. But some of them were poor and didn't have much of anything. And it talks about what changed their life. Like they devoured everything they could get a hold of, not as in they ate the books. They learned everything. And so, they're reading and studying the Bible all the time. This guy, he's learning Hebrew, he's learning Greek, he's learning all these languages. What in the world? But that's all. There's no more books. Can you imagine if you only had like one book in your house, how many times you would have read it? Just because it's the only book in your house. So there were a couple of them that they met someone or their father became friends with someone and he was like, you can have use of my library. And it was this moment like in Beauty and the Beast when they walk in the room and it's like, oh, this is my princess moment. Who needs romance? I got books now. And so these guys were like, I can learn everything because your library was your education. That's as much as you had. So if you think about your library in your home, what would you be really smart about based on the books in your house? Hmm? You think everybody goes around murdering everyone around you. Probably scriptures. You probably got a few of those. Probably a little science, probably some science kids books. What about you? Hey, you can be smart about that. That'd be awesome. Okay, well, this is going to be our expert about the war. There's just you end up getting the ones you really care about, right? They're the ones you're interested in. But for a lot of them, it's like a well-rounded education. We're talking like learning books. So they often thought of novels as like scandalous. You should be putting your mind to noble things, and you should be learning Hebrew and Greek. You shouldn't be reading stories about people that don't even exist. And the idea of play acting, my soul, in the book, scandal, scandal. What a frivolous, vain waste of time. So it's very interesting how times change, perspectives change. What is okay in one generation might not be okay in the next generation. So when you're reading history, it's always good. That's one of the things I love about historical novels is because you learn all kinds of things about what's okay and not okay from this story and what they're experiencing instead of just, here's a line in a history book. Like they didn't do plays because that was icky. Playing in the theater, like Shakespeare, there was this whole immoral, ungodly scene that like the idea of play acting was bad. Or like going to the movies. Do any of your families typically not go to the movies? Yeah, typically don't. But like as far as a conviction that this is a wrong thing, when I was younger, we'd go up to my grandpa's in Asheville. He was a pastor up there, and whenever we went up there, we never went to the movies because a lot of them believed it was wrong. Bowling alleys, pool tables, wearing a beard. None of you have to worry about that. But the problem is, it wasn't about the bowling. It was that a bowling alley was a place where people were smoking and probably drinking, and it was more like a bar. And so it's when you read something, it's not like, uh-oh, George Washington never went bowling, which I don't know if he did or not. So that means I should never go bowling if I want to be a good Christian. So again, don't read then in reference to now. Find out a little bit more. It's probably okay to do a play about Esther in the Bible. We're probably not leading anybody astray at this point. Or if not, we need to ask forgiveness for all the sins we just did. So that's it. Nobody's here yet for the play, but they will come. So you got your challenges, you got your information about the play, and from here on out, I figured I'd let you know. I love the revolution and the whole all the stuff. but we're talking about America's Christian heritage, and there's so much to say about that, about the godliness of these people, that there's not a lot of time to talk about things like the battles and the wars and the decisions and all the cool stuff. So I'm going to start sending you videos. Be prepared. Videos. Not like 100, but like a library, and you can learn. Yeah.
Do we get points for watching the video?
That's a very good question.